In my book, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, I offer 8 steps to help GMs prepare for their tabletop role-playing games. I don't think that these 8 steps are the end-all, be-all of all tabletop prep, but I think a lot of GMs really like having a structure in front of them that helps them have the right tools at the right time to be able to build good, fun, flexible games that can go in lots of interesting ways, that can move with the way the players take the game, and still give you enough material prepared that you feel ready to have the game. You can find these 8 steps in the free sample chapter of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, which is available on the Sly Flourish bookstore. There is a link in the show notes. These 8 steps from Return include review the characters, create a strong start, outline potential scenes, define secrets and clues, develop fantastic locations, outline important NPCs, choose relevant monsters, and select magic item rewards. So, and if you've watched any of my prep shows, you have seen me walk through these steps while I have been preparing for my role-playing game. I now have hundreds of these videos, I think, where I have gone through these 8 steps to build it out. So one of the questions I got early on was, what does it look like when you're actually building these steps out? So now I have hundreds of videos. But then the next thing was, that's great, but what does it look like when you actually use these steps at the table? And that's an interesting question. I want to thank Elizabeth, a patron of Sly Flourish, for bringing this up in the Sly Flourish Patreon Discord server. You too can join the Sly Flourish Patreon Discord server by becoming a patron in Sly Flourish. You get tons and tons of really awesome stuff. You get all kinds of tips and tricks for running your games, tools to help you run your games, City of Arches sourcebook, tons of stuff. But you get to also join the Sly Flourish Discord server and have really wonderful conversations like this. And the question was, what does it look like when you're using them at the table? How do you actually manifest these 8 steps while you're running the game? So I wanted to talk about what it looks like to actually use these steps at the table, how they get used, and they're all used in kind of different ways, but we'll talk about what those different ways are. Reviewing the characters, right? This is actually not a step where you would manifest it at your table. It's the step to help you set the baseline for all of the other 7 steps. You review the characters to take the characters and bring them into your mind so that you are thinking about your secrets and clues and your scenes and your monsters and everything else from the point of view of the characters, because they are the central point of your whole game. They are the actors on the stage. They are the leading actors on the stage. So you want to know who they are, what they want, what's been going on with them, what's changed, which of them are even going to be at the game, which of ones are not going to be at the game, and kind of put that in your mind while you're doing the other steps. So this isn't really a matter of how these manifest at the table. It's more a factor of how it drives the other steps that you have. And we'll talk about some of the ways that those drive. Creating a strong start is probably the easiest one to recognize for how it relates to the table, which is you write down, what is the opening scene of my game going to be? It's really the only scene that you're going to have any control over, because after that, the game could go in lots of different directions. But you want to have that starting scene. And the big question to ask when you're developing your strong start is, what happens? What is happening right now? What event is occurring? It's action-based. What's going on today? What happens? It's not a matter of setting the stage and saying, the characters are in a certain place. Now what do you want to do? You're not turning it in, and then it's something else. I will give an example. It's a little bit of a gory example. I have some characters in my Empire of the Ghouls game, and they are in the sewers of the city of Darakul, a ghoulish city of Darakul. You can imagine what the sewers of a ghoul city is like. Not very nice. They're sneaking in to a temple called the Temple of Agonizing Bliss, which is run by vampires. And they are they're underneath the vampire. So they go there. Well, the event, and that's where we ended the session, was they just saw the vent that is leading up into one of the halls of the Temple of Agonizing Bliss. So what's the strong start? I have a feeling giant gallons of blood will be poured down into the sewer. Bad blood, the blood that the vampires don't want anymore, will be poured down into the sewer. That will be the event. Maybe it coagulates into like an ochre jelly, right? It becomes this like terrible necrotic sentient stuff, and they can learn something from this. They can learn that there's like a necrotic energy flowing out of this place that's even reanimating the blood. I think there is a blood ooze in Kobold Press. That might be a fun monster to run. That is a strong start. It is not going to be a huge battle. It's going to be one monster, probably a low challenge rating monster against a bunch of high level characters, but they will get to see it right away and learn something. Something happens. A big pile of blood gets poured down the sewers into where they are, and that blood manifests into a blood ooze. They kill it, and then they go on. It's just a start. That is an example of how that would be. So at the table, I will have the players say, I will ask the players, hey, what happened in last session's game? I'll let them do the recap. I'll fill in. And then once they get to the end of the recap, then I'll say, there you stand beneath the sewers of the Temple of Agonizing Bliss. You hear this terrible crunching sound, and all of a sudden, what appears to be 50 or 60 gallons worth of blood come pouring down the vent. Everybody make like a dex saving throw. Oh, you get blood all over you, right? And then all of a sudden you see the blood start to roll up, and it becomes, and then pseudopods start to come out. Roll for initiative. Bang, we're right into the game. That's how that manifests. Outline potential scenes. So I've described the potential scenes. This is the next step. This is step 3. I've described outlining potential scenes as a way for you to kind of get your hands around what you think might happen in the game. It is not hardwired. You don't know that that's going to necessarily happen in the game. And you probably aren't going back to this during the game when you run it. This is another one to kind of just help you bound all of the things that you're getting ready for your prep. But during the game, you probably don't go back and read those scenes out. You might, if you get lost a little bit, if you don't know what was going on, or if you're offering up 3 choices to the characters and you want to remember what they are, then you might go back to your list and say, yeah, what were the 3 choices again? And you look at that and say, it seems like you have these 3 options ahead of you. So that would be how you would manifest at the table, probably at the end, but you're probably not referencing it during the game because you're on the roll while the game is going. So outlining potential scenes is not really a step that you would expect you are constantly referring to while you're running the game. Secrets and clues is the one where it's really different than almost any other kind of form of prep that you find out there. And it brings the most questions to me. It also brings the most people that say that they've grabbed onto it and are having a good time. The question is like, well, how do you reveal those secrets and clues? I get this question a lot. How do you reveal the secrets and clues? I've written articles about it. You can find information about revealing secrets and clues in the Lazy DM's Companion. What is it? Just real quick, a secret and clue is basically a 1-sentence thing about some kind of information that the characters may discover in the next game. It could be all different kinds of things. It could be information about the boss. It could be movement of the various villains and what they're doing. It could be a bit of history. It could be something involving the characters. It could be any kind of information that you think is useful or interesting to the players that you can drop in. And the key is you are not defining where they find it. You get to drop in those secrets and clues depending on where they go, what they explore. It's a way for you to improvise information as the characters are exploring the game. Now, so that means that the way this manifests at the table is just as varied as all of the different ways that the characters might learn so an example is if they're talking to an NPC, you might skim read your secrets and clues and figure out which of those secrets make sense for this NPC that the characters are talking to, and then have the NPC give up that piece of information. Maybe it's after making a particular kind of check, or maybe the NPC just gives it up. Maybe the characters are exploring an area and they see a mosaic on the wall. I use this example a lot. They're exploring a dungeon. You see a colorful mosaic behind cobwebs. I use this in my game myself. You see there's a bunch of cobwebs. You go and you see a mosaic on the wall, and from the mosaic, you pick out that these 2 gods actually used to be a couple, but then one god made a terrible decision and the other god broke up with them. And you can get this from the mosaic, right? And now you've got like a couple of secrets and clues that you check off because they learned it from looking at the mosaic. They could pick up a magic item. Maybe they see some runes on the magic item. They read it and the runes tell the story of a certain thing. That could be a secret and clue. Maybe the magic item is intelligent and it tells them about something. That's a secret and clue. They check it off. Piece of jewelry that they find brings up a piece of history. You have them roll a history check. They roll the check. They succeed. They learn one of the secrets and clues. So it can manifest in lots of different ways. But you are, unlike scenes, which you're not really referencing during the game, secrets and clues is something that you would want to have in front of you and that you would be regularly referencing to ask yourself, are any of these clues relevant to anything that the characters are doing right now? Your expectation with secrets is that you're not revealing all of them, though. We have 10 because you want to have enough to know that you have enough to run a game. You're not expected to run all of them. Maybe I do about half. Usually about 5 secrets get explored. Then the next session, I mix and match my secrets and clues to figure that out. Develop fantastic locations. Again, the type of game you're running is going to tell you how fantastic locations manifest. If you are doing a dungeon crawl, for example, in my next Empire of the Ghouls game, I'm doing a dungeon crawl. They're going through the Temple of Agonizing Bliss. So for me, preparing fantastic locations means getting a map of the location, taking out a pen or a Sharpie, and writing on 1-sentence descriptions for each of the rooms that I think they might explore. Then I have that map in front of me. As the characters move, I can tell them what's there. So for me, my fantastic location prep is a list of the places that they may see in front of me, either on the map directly or maybe a bullet item list in my notes that tell me the different places and give me just enough information on that thing that I can then improvise other things that they might find there. I don't usually fill them out with a ton of detail. I usually only put 2 or 3 words. That's just enough. I might say alchemical lab, and then alchemical, that tells me it's an alchemical lab. And then I'm usually able to come up like, oh, there's beakers and there's weird copper tubes and stuff. And it looks very flammable, right? Stuff like that. You might also develop fantastic locations if you have more of an exploratory game or a game where they're going through a city. You might have a bigger description of a fewer number of places. And the way that would operate is when they get there, you would look at your notes and you'd say, oh, they're at the big bank. So what are the 3 aspects of the bank? Well, it has giant golden vault doors. It has huge statues of the people who forged the bank. And it's got iron protectors and iron traps that are around there. So then you use those to kind of improvise your discussion and your description of what the place is like. The players ask you questions and you can respond by the notes that you have there. But again, the expectation is that you're not keeping a lot of information for fantastic locations. So that's how that manifests at the table. Important NPCs. You don't know which NPCs are going to really come up, but you might have a couple of big ones. So you write down the NPC. The main thing I look for is a name. The name is the one aspect that I'm going to forget all the time. So I want to have that name in front of me. I want to have it solid. If they meet a new NPC and I improvise an NPC, I need to write them down because I will forget that name and I will break the connection of reality with the players if I can't remember the name of the guy they just invented. It takes this ethereal concept, makes it solid, and then makes it ethereal again. So that's not good. Write names down. From that name, I usually can just kind of improvise the rest. I'm actually I think I'm pretty good. I'm happy enough with my own skills, and my players keep coming to my table that I don't really feel like I'm deficient in this. I'm pretty good about role-playing NPCs with just a name. I think about what their motivation is. I can usually improvise that. Like, what would this person want? And I say, well, this is what they kind of want. Mannerisms, I just sort of go with the flow. I've offered different ideas for like taking an archetype from a movie. If you want to be like, oh, I'm going to be like, Kathy Bates and Fried Green Tomatoes is going to be one of my heroines. You can do that, and that works really well. Sometimes you just kind of riff off of it. If you want more, you can do more. If you have more trouble with NPCs, you can put more details in there about the kinds of things. What are the important things? I would definitely say keep it brief and keep it specific. So then when they meet that NPC, you might look at your notes and say, what are the important things that I need to get this NPC to come across? Now, remember, you don't need to tie your secrets and clues to NPCs, which means you can have anything that NPC might know. You don't have to write it down because you already have it in secrets and clues, and it might not be that NPC who tells it characters. Choosing relevant monsters. If you are expecting to have combat or have situations where they're fighting hostile monsters, what I like to do is I write down the names of the monsters that I think might show up, and I write a page number down or I link to a reference so that I can easily look up that monster's stat block. And I don't really do much more than that. I don't really figure out exactly how many are going to be there. I don't work about battlefield tactics. I don't set up rooms with tokens and get everything prepared ahead of time because I don't know if they're going to go there. So I just list out the monster. I put the page number down. During the game, the way this manifests is I will look down and say, oh, this is the room where you're going to fight the blood ooze, right? The big nasty blood ichor. So if you're fighting the animated blood ichor, animated blood ichor is on page 292 of the creature codex. I find it, I open a page 292, I find the stat block. Sometimes it might be more detailed than that. If you have like a great big set piece battle with boss monsters and stuff, then I might list out like how many monsters, what their stat blocks are. I don't usually write down like a lot of tactics because I'm not really good at tactics. I don't really run tactics. For my games, this could be controversial and it's opinionated and you might totally disagree. I don't really worry about tactics on the monster side because I don't think the players care. I think the players care about their tactics and they're doing. Monsters are really there to like pile stuff on and make a challenge for the characters. That's not true for everybody. Some DMs really like the tactics of it. I used to in the 4th edition days. I don't so much anymore. So I don't really worry about the tactics. I will put interesting challenges in there. I'll have brutes up front. I'll have spellcasters in the back. I'll put guys in hard to reach places, whatever. I'll do all that kind of stuff. But I don't really worry too much about like writing down the turn by turn tactics of like what the monsters are going to do. I don't really find that very useful. So for me, the real big one is referencing the monster stat blocks. Like where can I find that monster stat block? So when it's time for me to find that monster, I can bring it onto the table. And that's what I look at when I'm actually at the table. I look and I go, oh, They're going to deal with some vampire spawn. What page is the vampire spawn? The vampire page spawn is on Monsters Menagerie, page whatever. I open the menagerie and I got my vampire spawn. Or I'm going to say, oh, they're fighting the vampire priestess queen, right? The high priestess of the vampires, the matron mother of vampires. I'm probably going to reskin the boss vampire from Flea Mortals. That's on page whatever. And so I have Flea Mortals book, I have page whatever, and I can look it up. So that's how I use that at the table. Selecting magic item rewards, I usually have a bullet list of different magic parcels. I might do 2 or 3 different parcels. Usually they're horde level parcels. I have a random generator that I use. It's a tool for patrons of Sly Flourish where you can generate them, but you can also use tools like Level Up Advanced 5e's Trials and Treasure to generate a treasure parcel. You can use the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, but I usually get a couple of treasure parcels, and there's a lot of good online tools to build treasure parcels. I usually put 2 or 3 in there, and then when it makes sense that the characters would find treasure, I can just go to the parcel, and like a secret and clue, I can drop it in where I want. So I use that in the game by saying, they just beat a boss, or they just opened up a treasure vault, or there's some other reason why there would be some treasure here. I can go to that parcel, and sometimes I'll split the parcel up. Maybe if they killed a guy, it's not likely he's got 12,000 gold pieces on him, but maybe he does have that 1,7,500 gold piece gem hanging from a lanyard around his neck. So I might pick pieces of a treasure parcel that the characters pick up because I'm not too bent about making sure that they get everything in the parcel. All of this comes down to keeping a loose grip on how things go. We are using the 8 steps in order to kind of get the stuff in front of us that we wouldn't want to try to roll up or come up with during the game, but we aren't deciding exactly how that stuff is going to play out. We do not do like sequential lists of scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4 with all of the stuff in it because I don't know that that's where that's going to go. I don't know if they're going to take a left turn. So instead, I like to think about the 8 steps as we take all of these things that would come out in scene 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we shatter it out into its individual pieces. So we have treasure, monsters, NPCs, locations, secrets. We have all this stuff separated out. And then from these little dishes, we can then bring them together and build them out at the table. They are pre-prepared. They're like pre-cooked food being brought out to your hibachi grill, right? We have all of this stuff ready to go. We know what monsters we're going to think about. We have the page numbers for them. We don't have to go look them up. We have our treasure. We already rolled up the treasure. We know what we have going on there. We know what NPCs we've got. We know what secrets and clues we've got. We know we have all these things. And now we get to decide how to mash that up together for the particular game that's happening at the table. So I hope this is a useful way at looking at how the 8 steps can manifest at your table. If you have not heard of this kind of stuff before, please check out Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. You can find Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master at the Sly Flourish bookstore. You can find a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day and get out there and play a role-playing game.